It's seed starting season, and that means if you're starting seeds, there are certain plants that as you're growing them, you can clip back to increase their growth, give you a larger, healthier plant in the long run. We're gonna talk all about which plants those are, how to do it, when to do it, and some of the other questions that arise around cutting back your seedlings. Let's go. So it is spring season in the greenhouse. I am super excited about it. I'm in a t-shirt and shorts, having a great day, and I hope you guys are as well. So in today's episode, we're gonna be transplanting up some sage, and it actually reminded me that I needed to talk about this because there are certain plants that can benefit from being pruned back. Now, when you prune back a seedling, essentially what it does is it encourages them to force more lateral growth. It essentially not only will encourage new growth, but it'll also encourage new growth at a much lower level on the plant, often giving you a larger, healthier, and bushier plant in the long run. A taller plant is not always great because it can be top heavy if it gets windy. It also is a longer distance for the water to travel up the stem. So if you happen to have dry weather, a taller plant is going to suffer far more than a shorter plant. Not only that, but a shorter plant is also typically going to be able to yield a little more fruit if it is a fruiting crop, because a larger plant, typically, again, once it is weighed down with fruit, that can sometimes risk snapping the stem. It can also just lead to other problems in the long run, whereas a shorter, stumpier plant can sometimes yield a lot more fruit as well. And so overall, if you can prune, pruning is a good option. But then that brings up the next question, which is, which crops should I be pruning? And so that is what we're gonna talk about next. While yes, every plant can be pruned back, certain plants are better candidates for pruning back than others. Take, for example, a tomato. A tomato can benefit from being pruned back, but if you prune back a tomato, it ultimately is just gonna make it very bushy. Now, if it's an indeterminate, you may not want a very bushy tomato because all that other side growth can sometimes restrict airflow and ultimately end up leading to a more messy plant in the long run and more to stake. So oftentimes pruning a tomato plant is not really something that we advocate for. And if it's a determinate tomato, it's already gonna be bushy to begin with, so pruning it is kind of a redundancy. Whereas take, for instance, sage. The sage is a prime example. It's a naturally bushy plant. It naturally wants to produce side growth. So as it's growing here as a seedling, I can come into the very top set of growth. I could take off that top little set of leaves there, essentially terminating that growth point, and it's going to force new growth out of all the other little leaf nodes, creating branching joints that are then going to lead to a far healthier, bushier plant in the long run, and it's actually going to expedite the process. So once you have kind of decided what you're going to prune, you also you want to talk about stuff that should not be pruned. Stuff that should not be pruned, they don't have any benefit at all. In fact, will sometimes even kill the plant. For instance, beans. Beans are not a crop that you really should be heading back because they don't produce a lot of bushy growth. And because they're a pretty fast turnaround crop, it's not one that's going to benefit. Lettuce, right? Like, why would you head lettuce? Lettuce, if you clip the top off, you're essentially going to kill it. There are lots of crops kind of like that do not form any bushy growth at all. They're already kind of just a singular crop. And if they don't form any branches, broccoli would be another example, right? You have one main broccoli plant that grows up. It does not form any other side branches naturally. So pruning it would only set it back, if not kill it completely, and would be very counterproductive. So you want to avoid crops like that. But crops that make great candidates, like I said, are just ones that naturally want to create more side growth. Basil is another fantastic example. Peppers are actually a good example. Now, when pruning peppers, a lot of you have asked me if there's a benefit. Now, if you have a long enough growing season, or if you start your seeds early enough indoors, there absolutely is a benefit to pruning your peppers back because it's going to encourage a far bushier, stockier, lower to the ground pepper plant that can host and hold more fruit. But if your season is short and you start your seeds at a normal time, you may not really have much time to provide a benefit to pruning, which is the other question that people ask is, when is the best time that I should be heading? The best time you should be heading your crops is when they've formed roughly 3 to 4 sets of adult leaves. So when you got a seedling here and it's got multiple sets of adult leaves, it's not great to prune a seedling too early because this is how they're generating energy. The leaves are what is generating more energy and growth. So pruning too early can really set the plant back, and pruning later can oftentimes it can be more or less a setback as well, because if it takes a lot of time to grow and then you just chop it off, well, all that time that it spent growing could have, in theory, been spent producing more side growth. So if you see here on this sage plant, we got 1 set of adult leaves, 2 sets of adult leaves, 3 sets, 4 sets, 5 sets. It's a good size seedling. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna come in here and we're gonna take off this top little tuft, these top little 2 sets of adult leaves. These 2 sets of adult leaves here leave 3 remaining sets, and in between the leaf node, you'll notice we've got ourselves some growth. That will be a future branch spot for more sage branches to grow out, and it's going to create a far bushier, healthier plant in the long run. So while pruning too early can be a problem and pruning too late can also be a problem, the question does arise, when is the best time? And that's really where I would say go by the plant. Not every plant's going to be the same. Sage is going to grow faster than maybe a pepper will. And a pepper may grow faster or maybe slower than a different crop that you're growing. And so go by how many leaves it has rather than a certain time frame. Now, I will also say as well that certain plants will respond much faster to pruning than others. For instance, if it is a very leafy, kind of herbaceous crop like sage or basil, they're going to respond very fast in a very positive way to being pruned or topped, as it is called. And they are going to respond very well to that because they are just producing more leaves and more herbaceous growth. A pepper will benefit, but it'll take a lot longer for that plant to respond to it because they naturally want to grow in more of an upright pattern. They will branch secondary, whereas these plants are going to branch anyways. They will branch regardless if you top them or not. And so the primary focus of some plants is to grow up, whereas some plants is just to produce more leaves. The ones that produce more leaves will respond faster to being topped. Now, the final thing I was going to mention is when you are topping your plants, it is very important that you top them in a dry environment. Now, this is something that a lot of gardeners miss, but it can actually open up if you are topping your plants in a very humid, very high humidity environment. We're in a greenhouse. It is humid, but it's very well ventilated. Oftentimes, that cut point there is very tender and it's very moisture rich. And what I would hate to happen is for you to invite in mildews, molds, or diseases by leaving that in a very high humid environment. You want to let that wound kind of scab over and heal, and that happens best in a very well ventilated area. Naturally, it will happen, but if you have a humidity dome on, first of all, it should be off, but absolutely remove that humidity dome, let that cut breathe, let it dry up, and it will naturally heal so much faster. But that is about it. I know you're probably gonna ask, well, some other plants, Luke. Okay, I can't go through every single plant, but I can name off a few more just to leave you with a few more. So a few more plants that you can top and have benefits would be plants like rosemary, as I said. Basil is another one. Peppers, sage, thyme, oregano, a lot of your Mediterranean herbs, as you can see. You can also top your onions. Now, onions do not need to be topped to produce more lateral growth. They're not going to produce more branches because they don't have any branches at all, but topping your onions can actually focus more energy on a bulb. And so just topping off some of that green growth can help to have a lower center of gravity and promote more growth. You can top a lot of your flowers as well. You could top your dahlias. Dahlias will produce a lot more heads. You could top your sunflowers even as they start to get more mature, and that will help to promote a lot more heads on your sunflowers rather than one big one. You're going to end up with 5 or 6 little small ones. So sunflowers even. There are many flowers that can be topped, and that will certainly help to promote more growth, more branching, and more flowers in the long run. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you all learned something new. If you did, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I really do hope that this information helped you in the garden and helps you to grow bigger. So as always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow bigger. Take care. Have a good one. Bye. Hey, thank you so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed, consider clicking this one. You'll probably enjoy it just as much. I want to thank you for your viewership, because without it, this channel would not be as amazing as it is. Also, if you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing. It's free, and we upload videos every Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. We also have vegetable seeds, fertilizer, or tools. If you need any of those, consider visiting MIgardener.com. Links will be in the description box below. We've got you covered. And as always, we'll see you all in the garden. Take care.